And so instead of any bells and whistles tonight, I simply just want to walk you through the Bible. And I want you guys tonight, I want you to see how big God is. And I want you to be blown away by how big God is. And I want you to know that, like that song we just sung, that he is able to do anything. And that when you have a relationship with him, you have the biggest, baddest, greatest, richest, coolest, toughest, most beautiful person in the world on your side. Okay, God could beat up way more people with a jacket than Jackie Chan can, all right? God can throw a baseball way faster than your pitcher, dude, Kershaw. Okay, God can, he's better, he's greater than all of those people and everything that they have to offer. And the crazy thing is that he's on your side. And some of you tonight, you need to be reminded of that. I don't know where you're at tonight, but I just get the feeling that this has been just kind of a mundane week for you. I get the feeling this is week 2 of high school. Any hoorays for that? I didn't think so, okay? More booze. Oh, you got a hooray there? Yes. And so sometimes we just get in this spot where we feel just kind of like deflated. And tonight, I don't want this to just be an average night for you. I want you to hear God speak. And so I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump into Daniel chapter 2. You guys all there? Daniel chapter 2? If you don't own a Bible, come talk to me afterward. I'd love to give you a Bible. I have some very nice ones in my office, so I'd love to give you one. Let's pray. God, you are on our side. And as we just sung a moment ago, you are with us, and you're for us, and you're greater than the impossible circumstances that we go through. You're greater than our biggest weaknesses. You're greater than kings and queens and rulers and authorities. You're greater than people groups. You're greater than cliques and friends at school. You're greater than parents. You're greater than it all. And I just ask that tonight when we unpack your scriptures, that you would speak to us, and that whatever it is that you want to communicate to us through the book of Daniel, that we would hear and respond. And if we need to spend some time praying tonight, I pray that we would do that. In Jesus' name, amen. Daniel chapter 2. You guys all there? Daniel chapter 2. As you're turning there, hopefully you are there, let me just kind of bring you up to speed with the book of Daniel. So in Daniel chapter 1, this guy named Nebuchadnezzar, okay, I call him Nebu, all right? Kind of reminds me of Aladdin. And Aladdin makes me sad right now, by the way, because Robin Williams is gone, which is very sad. But it's because I just can't help but think of that. Anyways, Nebuchadnezzar, this guy Nebuchadnezzar, he is the greatest ruler in all the world. This is about 605 BC, and he is building his empire, and it's stretching across the known world, and he's defeating one kingdom after another after another. And Nebuchadnezzar came upon a city called Jerusalem and a little nation called Israel. And he marched upon that city, and he brought his soldiers, and he captured the city. And when he captured this city, he took all the youth out of the city who were good looking, all the youth who were smart, all the youth who belonged to noble families, all the youth who looked like they had potential. Every youth that looked like he or she had potential, Nebuchadnezzar came in, he captured the city, and then he kidnapped those teenagers. And he took those teenagers and he brought them back to Babylon. Babylon is located in modern-day Iraq. We just spent some time praying for Iraqi Christians. And so he brought them to Babylon, and he took these teenagers. Okay, imagine this. Imagine being a teenager and, number one, being kidnapped. Like, that's frightening. Okay, I don't know about you, but I would have a hard time going to sleep sometimes at night because I was afraid of being kidnapped. I would see something in a magazine, or I would hear news about something, or I'd hear a sound, and I just can't sleep because I'm afraid like some dude's going to come in with a gun and take me. Anybody ever feel like that as a child? Okay, like 4 of you. Well, maybe I was just paranoid. But that's scary to think of, being kidnapped. Well, imagine a nation that hates you, okay? Imagine a nation that hates Americans, like hardcore hates Americans, like just would kill any American, has no problem killing Americans. We're seeing some of that now in Iraq because of this group called ISIS. But imagine a nation that hates you, stepping into your world, taking over your family, and kidnapping you, and taking you and bringing you back to their nation. And when he brought these youths back to his nation, he tried to reprogram them. So he took away their name, and he gave them a Babylonian name. So if they had some Jewish name, they took that away, replaced it with a Babylonian name. An example is Daniel, the guy that we're studying about. His name was Daniel, but when he moved to Babylon, they took it away and they called him Belshazzar. And he's named after a god. And so basically, he took away his name and he reprogrammed him, and he tried to turn Daniel and all of these young guys and girls into something else. He tried to turn them into people who would be loyal to Nebuchadnezzar, loyal to Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and loyal to Nebuchadnezzar's God. But the problem is, what they didn't see coming, is that Daniel wasn't going to go down without a fight. Daniel was okay with dressing how they dressed and doing some of the things that they did and learning what they learned, but he was not going to turn his back on the God that he worshiped. He would rather die. He would rather be eaten by lions. His friends would rather burn to death than turn their back on the God that they worshiped. And this was a group of teenagers. So Daniel, he's in this crazy set of circumstances. And even though his life is crazy and he's going through probably the biggest trial he's ever faced and will ever face, it's in the midst of this crazy set of circumstances that God comes through and does big things in Daniel's life. Daniel, in Daniel chapter 1, he began to stand out more than any other youth in the kingdom. It says in Daniel chapter 1 that Daniel and his friends were 10 times better than everybody else. So he began to stand out. And then in Daniel chapter 2, something crazy happened. And so that's what I want to talk about tonight. In Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, has a nightmare. Let me stop there for a second. Have you ever had a nightmare? Like a bad nightmare. Like, have you ever had one of those nightmares where you wake up sweating? Have you ever had one of those nightmares where you wake up angry? Have you ever had one of those nightmares where you wake up and maybe your eyes are filled with tears? Have you ever had a night terror? How many of you have had a night terror before? Okay. How many of you have seen somebody have a night terror? Okay, I feel like it's scarier for the person watching the night terror than for the person going through the night terror. Now you guys know since I was a little kid, I've had night terrors, okay? And since I was a little kid, I've had nightmares, I've had night terrors, I've had crazy things happen in my sleep. And I've walked in my sleep. Have any of you ever walked in your sleep? Okay. There's nothing worse. I don't know why. I haven't done this, but people do the weirdest things when they walk in their sleep. They'll go and they'll go pee in the refrigerator, or they'll go and they'll make a sandwich of mayonnaise and peanut butter or something, or they'll just do the weirdest things in their sleep. And I've done some weird things in my sleep. I've never peed on anything, but I remember in elementary school, I was probably 9 years old, and I was in Palm Springs, and we were on this family vacation, and we were in this big hotel, and it was a few stories tall, and I remember I woke up in the middle of the night on a staircase, okay? Talk about frightening, all right? I woke up, I had no idea how I got there. And so I wake up and I'm on this staircase, and I was 9 years old, maybe younger, and I didn't know where the staircase was, and I had no idea what building I was even in. And so I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Did somebody kidnap me? That's what I'm thinking. where are the kidnappers? Like, this is so weird. How did I sleep through that? So I wake up, and then I realize I'm in a hotel, but it wasn't the hotel that I remember being in, staying with my family in. And so obviously a little kid, 8 years old or whatever, I'm looking for help. And so I go up to the first door that I see, and I knock on the door, just like desperate cry for help. And the guy who opens the door, he says, "What the heck do you want, kid?" I'm like, "I'm lost." He's all, "We'll deal with it." And he slams the door in my face. Yeah. I'm like 8 years old. Like, people are rude, by the way. Like, I could not believe that just happened. And so obviously I just start bawling, right? Like, I'm just crying, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm lost. I'm going to die out here." Like, my family's going to leave me. No one's going to know what happened to me. Like, and so I walk out of this building, and I end up in the parking lot, and I see a car that looks like our car, and for some reason, I have this bright idea to like try to sleep under the car. Yeah, because it was rainy and stuff, and it was the worst scenario ever. And then as I'm walking to get like under the car, to sleep under the car, hoping that in the morning I'll run into a nice person instead of that jerk that I woke up, it hit me. I saw another staircase, and I saw our hotel, and it just hit me like, oh, I must have been sleepwalking. So everything came to my mind, and I ran to the hotel, and I ran up the stairs, and I saw my door was wide open to our hotel room, and I ran in, and I laid down, and I went to sleep, and it was frightening. But I've gone through crazy things in my sleep. And some of you have gone through crazy things in your sleep. Not just night terrors or, saying weird things or doing weird things, but some of you in this room have seen things in your sleep. And some of you have experienced demonic things in your sleep. And I just want to say, we'll kind of see in this series that demonic forces are real. And some of you guys have seen things, and I grew up and I had all kinds of crazy things happen to me in my sleep. And I want you to see tonight, I want you to get hope. If some of you are in that situation, I want you to have hope tonight. But Nebuchadnezzar, we'll get there in just a moment. Nebuchadnezzar, he was sleeping and he had this crazy dream. And this was not a demon-inspired dream. This was a dream that God gave him. And he has this dream. And all of a sudden, what comes into his mind is a statue. And it's this beautiful statue, and I believe that it's probably a statue that looks like him. Can you pull up the first statue really quick? So he has this dream. And in this statue, it's probably a statue that looks like him. And a statue with all these different metals, has a gold head and silver arms and chest and bronze waist and iron and clay legs and feet. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of this dream, Nebuchadnezzar, he probably sees the statue, and he's probably all excited, like, "Oh man, I look buff in this statue." Like, this is like the ancient selfie right here. Okay, this is what they did. If they wanted to see themselves, they had to pay lots of money. They couldn't just take a million pictures in front of their mirror like you guys do, right? So this is. So he has this dream, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the dream, a rock comes out of nowhere and destroys the statue. A rock that is not cut by human hands, is what it says. And destroys the statue and turns the statue to dust. And so Nebuchadnezzar, naturally, he wakes up frightened. Because he had a dream, and in the dream, basically, he got turned to dust. And so he's so frightened, and he has no idea what the dream means. He has this nightmare, and so he decides to call in all of his wise men, all of his enchanters, all of his magicians. And he says, "Guys, I have a job for you." This is in verses 1 through 15. He said, "I have a job for you. I had a crazy dream, and I want you to tell me what that dream meant. But not only do I want you to tell me what the dream meant, I want you to tell me what I dreamed." Okay? I want you to tell me what I dreamed, because I don't need your foolish, blowing smoke kind of answers. I want the truth. And so he makes this request, and he says, "By the way, if you don't tell me my dream and the interpretation of my dream, then I'm going to tear you from limb to limb, and I'm going to tear down your house. So I'm going to rip off your arms and legs and your head, and then I'm going to tear your house down." So kind of, yeah, kind of a big deal. Well, their response is this to Nebuchadnezzar. They said in verses 10 and 11, they said, there's not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Basically what they say is this: Nebuchadnezzar, we can't tell you your dream and the interpretation of your dream because what you're asking of us is impossible. You are making a request that is impossible. Only the gods can answer that, and the gods don't live with us. Their dwelling is in heaven. You have asked us to do something impossible, and no man can respond to what you asked. Let me ask you for a second, just kind of pause there. Have you ever faced an impossible situation? Have you ever been in your life, or a spot in your life where you feel like you're stuck? Maybe people are making demands out of you that you feel like you can't live up to. You feel like it's impossible to be a Christian on your football team. It's impossible to live for Jesus at my crazy school. It's impossible to minister to my family because they're crazy. Ricky, if you knew my family, you wouldn't minister to them either. Ricky, it's impossible for this. My friend is so lost and so jacked up that it's impossible for him or her to be saved. Or maybe you're in a spot where you just feel like, you know what? Life is impossible. It's impossible for me to be happy. It's impossible for me to change my reputation. People bully me. People say bad things about me. People gossip about me. It's impossible to get past this. Have you ever been in some kind of situation where you just feel like life is impossible, or you feel like the requests that people are making are impossible? Have you ever been there? If you haven't, you will be there at some point. Sometimes I look at my life, I'm like, wow, how am I going to get through the day? Well, Daniel heard that the king asked the magicians and enchanters and wise men to do something impossible. And Daniel knew that he served a God who can do the impossible. Daniel knew that, okay, with man, what the king is asking is impossible. Yep, that's true. But with God, all things are possible. And so Daniel, being this bold teenager who believed in a giant God who's able to do big and mighty things, Daniel steps up and steps out, and he comes to the king, or the servant of the king, and he says this, verse 16. It says, and Daniel went in, and he requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Now the crazy thing is this. Daniel didn't even know the dream, and Daniel didn't even know the interpretation at this time. Daniel just believed that his God could do the impossible. And so a teenage boy steps up to a king who wants to rip him from limb to limb. You imagine that? Like, he wasn't going to like hear a red, buzzer noise like, no, you're wrong, Daniel. That wasn't going to be the response. It was going to be, you're wrong, give me your arm, I'm ripping it off, okay? That was the response. Okay, and then give me the other arm, I'm ripping that one off too. So that's how crazy this was. Daniel, as a teenager, says, give me an audience with the king. Because I serve an impossible God, and a God who can make the impossible possible. And so Daniel makes this request, and he's granted the request. And so this is what it says in verse 17. Then Daniel went to his house, and he made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, his companions. You guys have good Christian friends? Raise your hand in here if you have a few good Christian friends. Okay, when you are facing an impossible situation, the best thing for you to do is to start gathering some of those friends, letting them know what's going on, and then look at what they do. When the friends gather, these teenagers, he told his friends, his believing friends, and he said, this is what I want you guys to do. Seek mercy from God. They prayed. He said, seek mercy from God, the God of heaven, concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel's response to this impossible situation is he puts himself out there, he gathers his friends, and instead of having a powwow with his friends, like, all right, guys, like, what do you think? Did he dream about lions? Did he dream about, blood? What did he dream about? Instead of like trying to conspire on their own, he says, guys, I need your help, but this is what I want you to do. I don't need your advice. I just need you to pray. And so Daniel and his friends, they get on their knees and they begin to pray. They begin to pray to a God who could do the impossible. Now, let me pause there for a second. I asked you a second ago, what feels impossible in your life? Maybe there's something right now. What in your life right now, it just feels like it's impossible? What is that in your life right now? Maybe it's an illness. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a hard situation at school or home. I don't know what it is. What feels impossible? Now, my next question is this. What do you do? What do you do when you're faced with an impossible scenario? Do you, one, like Nebuchadnezzar, call on men? Okay, that's what Nebuchadnezzar did, right? Nebuchadnezzar said, hey, I have this dream. I don't know what it means. So I'm going to call all the wise men. I'm going to call up Oprah. I'm going to call up, Dr. Oz. I'm going to read a horoscope in a magazine. I'm going to go see a magician. I'm going to go talk to some enchanter, tarot card reader. Like this, that was Nebuchadnezzar's response. I'm going to go to the wise people of my day and I'm going to get my thing worked out. Well, that's not, looking for help from people isn't a bad response. Don't go to a tarot card reader, okay? That's a bad response. But looking for help from people isn't a bad response. But what you're going to see is that people can only do so much. I can give you advice, but I can't change your scenario. Only God can do that. And so you have three options, really, when you're faced with an impossible situation. You could be like Nebuchadnezzar, who calls on men and says, hey, I want you to fix this for me or help me get through this. Or you could be like Daniel, who calls up his friends and says, hey, we're not going to talk about this. We're just going to pray. We're going to get on our knees and pray. Or you could do the third thing, which is very popular among high schoolers, and that is you can look for an escape. Some of you know what it's like to look for an escape. Instead of facing the situation head on, instead of being real about what's happening, instead of thinking about the hard things in your life and trying to resolve them with God's help, you try to escape. And you do that through partying, and you do that through sex, and you do that through drugs, and you do that through alcohol, and you do that through pills. And some of you do that through cutting. And some of you try to manipulate your body to look a certain way because you feel like if I change my appearance, then I could forget about my problems. A lot of teenagers nowadays, their response to impossible situations is so unhealthy. It's, I'm going to cut my arm. It's, I'm going to commit suicide. It's, I'm going to grab a gun and go to my high school and shoot all the people who have treated me like trash. That's the world that we live in right now. Let me just tell you guys, you will face impossible scenarios. And you do have three options. Run to people, which can help, but ultimately can't save. Run to God in prayer. And just let me tell you, when you're praying, sometimes you feel like you're doing nothing. Like, if you feel like really that's the response? Like, just get on my knees and pray? Like, I don't need to go out and do a bunch of stuff? No, just get on your knees and pray. Or you could try to escape through cutting yourself or doing a million other things, which people in here have tried. What do you do when impossible situations come? Well, Daniel and his friends, they got on their knees and they prayed. Instead of running, instead of hiding, instead of escaping, they got on their knees and prayed. And the good news is that God is a gracious God who loves those who seek him with their whole heart, who hears those who are in need, and he's a God who responds. I need you guys to know that tonight. God responds. He hears you. He loves you. He's not leaving you in this alone. And let me just pause before I read these next set of verses. I want you to see Daniel didn't throw a pity party, okay? When Daniel was faced with this situation, he didn't go and write some emo rock song, right? He didn't dye his hair black and, I don't know, start making like these depressing songs, okay? And if you like that kind of music, that's fine. I'm not bagging on it by bagging on it. I don't mean to bag on it. But his response wasn't, I'm going to throw a pity party and I'm going to tell everybody how jacked up my life is and woe is me and I want everyone to feel bad for me and I just want everybody to have their eyes on me and hear how messed up my life is and feel bad for me. And my life's just going to be drama, and I'm going to be dramatic everywhere I go, and I'm not going to smile, and I'm not going to laugh, and I'm not going to... He wasn't like that. He didn't have a pity party. Instead, he kept his head high. His faith was strong. He got on his knees. He prayed. And the cool thing is God came through. Verse 19. Then the mystery... This impossible mystery, verse 19, then the mystery, after praying, was revealed to Daniel in a vision. God spoke again in a dream. The mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So Daniel prays, God responds, and look at, how does Daniel respond? What does he do? He worships God, right? Okay, so how many times have you asked God to come through, and then he comes through for you, and you're like, oh, great, I made it through that one, and you just move on, right? Like that was close, right? I've done that so many times. See, Daniel, as a teenager, he did something that was really wise and was really amazing, and it's what I want to do every time God comes through. God comes through, and the first thing he does is sing a song. He sings a song of praise to God. He worships God. God comes through and he worships. He says this, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I will give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might and have made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made the matter known to us, the king's matter. His response was, wow, God, you really are God. You're greater than Nebuchadnezzar. You're greater than every king and every ruler. The only reason that they're even kings, the only reason that they even have influence is because you gave it to them in the first place. You're in control not of just me, but of every nation, every person, everyone on this entire globe. You are in control, and you reveal mysteries. When things are impossible, you make us see what's going on in the situation, and you come through and do the impossible. He responds with this crazy song of just, God, you're awesome. God, you're greater. You're greater than kings. You're greater than queens. You're greater than mysteries. You are greater. And God comes through, and Daniel responds with worship. And in verse 21, he has that aha moment. He says, God, you change times and seasons. You remove kings and set up kings. You are in control. What I want you guys to know tonight is this. God is greater than anything that you're going through. He's greater than the greatest people on this earth. He's greater than kings. He's more powerful than celebrities. He's stronger than Satan and demons. Some of you, I kind of talked about it in the beginning, some of you might be battling right now with Satan and demons. Some of you might be battling right now with dark spiritual things. And for those of you who are in that spot, I sympathize with you because I grew up battling with that as well. The good news is God is greater. He's stronger, he's more powerful, and he can do the impossible. Greater than the greatest rulers, smarter than the smartest people, richer than the richest in the land, more powerful than the strongest weapons. He is greater. And whatever it is that you're going through is like this compared to God. Daniel prays, God responds, then Daniel, in conclusion, we're getting towards the tail end. I know this is kind of a long sermon. In conclusion, Daniel comes before the king. Listen to what it says, verse 24. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, the servant, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He goes to the guy that wants to kill him, okay? He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise man or enchanter or magician or astrologer can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. What you're asking, nobody on this earth can give you the answer. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. He's going to tell you about your future, Nebuchadnezzar. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. And so Daniel goes on. He says, what you wanted, God came through, he showed it to me. And he goes on and he goes to explain the interpretation of the dream, what the dream is, and the interpretation. Can you throw up the next slide real quick? We don't have time for this. No, the image slide. Do you have another image slide? Maybe not. Yes. Okay. What he does is he says, in this dream, God gives Nebuchadnezzar a picture of the future. And he tells Nebuchadnezzar about all of these empires that are going to come after Nebuchadnezzar. And so if you like world history, then you'll love this part. If you don't like world history, then you're going to hate this part, okay? It's like going to a classroom that you don't want to learn from. But I'm not going to go into it because we're out of time. But he basically said, Nebuchadnezzar, you are this head of gold in the image, and you're the one who's in charge of the world right now and ruling, and I put you there. But guess what? I'm going to take you off your throne, and you're going to be replaced with another kingdom. And that kingdom is going to be the Persian kingdom, okay? The Persians, anybody watch the movie 300? Yes, okay. So you guys have heard of Xerxes, right? Xerxes in the movie 300. Okay, that's the Persians. Okay, these are real kingdoms. This is not fairy tale world. These are real kingdoms. Babylon was a real kingdom that existed in modern-day Iraq. It was taken over by Persia, and you know about the Persians. If you anybody like Greek architecture, like the giant, temples and stuff. What's on the Greek temples is the Greeks beating the Persians. So every temple image is basically like Greeks beating down on Persians, like just smacking them down, all right? So the Persians come to power, then God says, and I'm going to take them down, and then another kingdom is going to come to power, and they're going to be the Greek kingdom. And then they're followed by the Roman Empire. And while Rome is in power, a great kingdom is going to come, and it's going to smash all of those kingdoms. And who comes on the scene in the New Testament during the Roman Empire? Who? You guys could say it louder. Who comes on the scene? Jesus comes on the scene. Okay? So Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, God in the flesh, he comes in and he begins to establish his kingdom and destroy these other ones. And his kingdom is growing and growing and growing until one day he's going to come back to this earth and make it present. Make our faith will turn to sight. And in Daniel, we're going to get into some of that future crazy stuff. But he's showing him in the beginning here, God's in control. Well, after this interpretation, this is how it closes. The band, you guys could go ahead and come on up right now. The end of the story, Daniel chapter 2. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face. Think about that. The greatest king in the world, the most powerful man, the richest man, hears some words from a teenager, and he falls on his face. He fell on his face and paid homage to Daniel. This great and mighty king begins to pay homage to Daniel and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. He worships Daniel. That's how jacked up Nebuchadnezzar is, okay? His response is, wow, let me worship you. Who should he be worshiping? God, the revealer of mysteries. But Nebuchadnezzar isn't getting it. And so his response is, wow, this man came through for me, so I'm going to provide a little worship. The king answered and said, Daniel, then he goes on and gives God some credit, but he doesn't actually worship God. It says, Daniel, truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings and revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon. So Daniel went from this lowly servant to this high and mighty ruler in one event and chief prefect over all the wise men. Daniel made a request to the king, and he said, hey, I want Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be with me, part of my entourage, see over the affairs of the province of Babylon. And Daniel remained in the king's court. So I just want to close with this. Daniel faced with an impossible situation. Daniel turns to God in the face of an impossible situation with his friends. God comes through. God comes through. Daniel gives who the credit? God the credit. The king recognizes that God is alive in Daniel. And when the king recognizes that God is alive in Daniel, the king can't help but be moved. And he's confused. He doesn't know who to worship. He doesn't know who to give the credit to. But he knows that he saw something happen that shouldn't have happened. He knows that he witnessed the divine. He witnessed the miraculous. And what I want to close with tonight is this. Do you guys live in such a way that people see God in you? Do you live in such a way that when you come into contact with people, people leave saying, it is obvious that Jesus is in Madison. It is obvious that Jesus is in life. It's obvious that God is doing big and mighty things in Alyssa. Do people, when they encounter you, do they see a picture of God? Do you live in such a way where you take big enough risks and you try crazy enough things and you believe in the impossible in such a way that when you interact with people, people cannot help but leave saying, wow, I saw something special, something that wasn't human, it wasn't this person, it was something bigger. And sometimes they'll connect the dots and they'll say, wow, God is alive. God is not dead. He is alive. Other times they'll connect the dots, kind of, and they'll say, there's something here and I want to know more. Guys, I want you, I'm choosing to go through this series because I don't want you to be mundane, boring Christians. I don't care about nominal Christians. I have no sympathy towards them. I want to see you guys be all in. I want to see you guys believe big things. I want to see you guys live for God in such a way. I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm not saying life will be perfect. But you live on the edge, and God has to come through for you. That's what I want to see. Because when you are there, and you're walking with Jesus, and Jesus is alive in you and moving through you, not only will you be transformed in the process, but everyone around you will be transformed as well. Some of you need Jesus tonight. Some of you are in an impossible situation, and so we're going to close with a song. You can go and pray. We'll have some leaders around. You can pray with them. Some of you need to receive Jesus maybe for the first time tonight. Or some of you just need to sing and say, God, give me faith, give me strength. I'm not where I want to be, but I know what you're calling me to, and I call upon your name, and I need you. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Help us believe that you're big. Help us believe that you're able. Help us to be sold out for you. I pray in your name. Amen.